Universal basic income is one of the most important social and economic concepts for the early 21st century. But what are the arguments for it? Let's have a look. Hello everyone, my name's Mark Jago. Today I'm going to be telling you about universal basic income. I'm really excited to be telling you about this. I think it's a really important concept. I think it's really important for us to be able to know the basics of the issues and be able to discuss them with each other. In this first video, I'm going to be talking you through the basics of what is universal basic income and how would it work. Then in the second video, and this is going to be the longest one, we're going to go through all the arguments against and all the arguments for. And I'm going to try to focus on the philosophical issues, but we're going to have a little dip into some of the economic issues. In the third video, I'm going to talk about how government spending works, how money is created, and how that provides a background to answering the question of, could we actually afford a universal basic income? If you're enjoying this series of videos, consider subscribing to the channel. I'd really like to have you on board. Okay, so let's kick it off with what is universal basic income? So the idea is it is an income paid regularly, say monthly, to everyone or every citizen or every resident citizen in the country that provides a basic income. Okay, that is an income that gives you a basic level of economic security. So it's not about making everyone wealthy, well off, it's about providing that basic level of economic security. Okay, so some basic questions that I guess we should cover right at the start. How much are we going to be paying people? What level do we set the basic income at? To whom are we going to be paying it? How is this going to work? And is the idea that this replaces the benefit system, the social security system, or will that still be going alongside universal basic income? Okay, the issue of how much we pay, how high we set the basic income, I mean, this is a really, really difficult issue. To give you some kind of figures, working full-time at the minimum wage is about £13,000 a year. Working full-time at the national living wage is getting on for £15,000 a year. So if you think that a basic income should be aligning with minimum wage or living wage, then you would align it with those. A different approach would be, let's set the basic income at a level that's going to take everyone out of poverty. So you look at all the different people in relative poverty in the UK and you say, how much will be needed to lift all of them out of that? Now, actually, that's not a simple calculation. It's not easy just to give you a number and say that number is going to just take everyone out of poverty. And that's because poverty, being in poverty, isn't just about how much money you earn. Okay, so let me give you an illustration of that. Imagine you've got two able-bodied people and they're living together in a flat and they don't have kids. So maybe they don't have a huge amount of expenditure. They can share resources in the house, so the mortgage or the rent and the bills and the broadband and the food and all that stuff, they're paying it jointly. Okay, maybe they don't need much money, much income to get by. Compare that couple to a physically disabled person who lives on their own. They're typically going to have much, much higher costs. So they would have to have a higher level of support or a higher income in order to be out of hardship. Okay, so what it takes for somebody to be in poverty really depends on their personal circumstances, their health, their mental health, their physical health, whether they've got kids, whether they live alone or with people so they can share resources, and the area they live in. Like, how much does housing cost in their area? How much do amenities or how much does food cost in their area? So it's not as simple as just saying, okay, here's your median income, here's your poverty line, and let's just lift everybody above that. There's also a debate about, is the aim to be lifting literally everybody out of poverty? That would take quite a lot. Again, so think about our, disabled person living on their own or somebody who's got lots of kids. You might not want to lift everybody up that much, because if you provided a basic income to everyone of the same amount, large enough to lift everyone out of poverty, then the thought would be you're giving too much to people who don't need it. So if that was your thought, what you could be looking at doing is providing everybody with a lower level basic income in tandem with social security that would target people's individual circumstances. So providing support for disabilities, for children, for housing costs, that kind of thing. So I guess my take is that it's an empirical question, basically, what level we should set the basic income at to get the best consequences for society. So we could start it off at a certain level and we can over time evaluate those consequences and adjust it accordingly. I mean, that is the thing with empirical questions, right? You can't just sit in your philosophy seminar room and work them out. You have to actually go out there and try and measure the responses and adjust accordingly. Whom are we going to be paying a basic income to? Well, everyone, yeah, but not literally everyone, okay? You don't want to be paying it to young kids. So maybe we're paying it to all adults. Maybe we're starting off at 16. Maybe we're starting off at 18. Are we paying it to all residents, to all citizens? Well, it doesn't seem like you want to be paying a basic income to UK citizens living abroad. That doesn't seem to be meeting the social, aims of the scheme. So maybe it's all resident citizens. Then we have an issue about, okay, well, what about non-citizens who are resident in the UK? If somebody lives in the UK for long enough but they're not yet a citizen, do we have a sort of eligibility test? Is it just like if they live here long enough, they have it? What about asylum seekers? What about refugees? Is there a minimum, period somebody has to go through before they're eligible? I think, again, these are more or less all questions that we have to more or less discuss democratically, and they don't really impinge on the main issues that we're discussing when we're talking about basic income. So basically what we're going to be discussing today are what are the main philosophical and economic arguments for basic income, what are the main arguments against it, and whether we apply it to absolutely everyone or just the majority of people, maybe excluding, some people for some reasons because they haven't been resident for long enough. It doesn't really affect those arguments too much. The main feature of the system is it is a payment to everyone eligible, that it's not a loan, it doesn't have to be repayable, and you don't have to do anything to get it. It's automatically paid into your bank account, and it can't be something that can be recouped by the state. So even if you get into, credit card debt, it's not like your credit card company can go and seize your basic income. And this is a debatable one, if you get convicted and you go to prison, I think you should still be paid it because you're still a citizen. Another really important feature is how it interacts with taxation, okay? So the idea that we just pay everyone a universal basic income and leave everything else the same, I don't think that's a great idea, okay? Because there's the idea that you take somebody who's already on a great income and you're going to pay them more money. That doesn't sit well with a lot of people. So the idea is we adjust the taxation system to sort of compensate for already well-off people receiving this basic income. So well-off people would still receive the basic income, but then they would return all of it in tax. So for well-off people who decide to kind of keep doing their job, keep everything else the same, they wouldn't see any difference or minimal difference in their income. So really it would be targeted at people at the lower end of the income distribution. But the important thing there is we're not saying, first of all, we work out who's at the bottom of the income distribution and we pay it just to them. No, we're paying it to everyone, regardless of their income. And then for people who are already on a good income, they are going to be returning it in their tax payments. That's important for a number of reasons. Firstly, and probably least important, it's just so much easier administratively, right? We can do all this through the tax system, which is already up and running. We don't want an extra layer of trying to work out, well, who's eligible, who's not eligible. We already do that with the benefits system, and it is really, really administratively expensive and difficult, and it involves small amounts of fraud and a lot amount of discrimination and shame, and it's just a bad system, and this would be a much, much better way of doing it. Okay, and finally, do we want this system to replace our current benefit system, or should it be working alongside it in tandem? Well, I think there's a trade-off here, and we kind of already covered this a little bit when we talked about what level should it be set at. Basically, if we want to replace the benefit system, the social security system, with a universal basic income, we've got to set the universal basic income high enough to make sure that the most vulnerable people in society don't lose out and actually are better off afterwards. So that would mean really setting the universal basic income at quite a high level. At the other extreme, we could say we could leave the current benefit system as it is and just provide universal basic income as an additional. Okay, but there we're basically stuck there with all the problems currently in the benefit system. So, small amounts of fraud, large amounts of discrimination and shame surrounding it. We want universal basic income to help us out with those. And part of the idea there is, since everybody receives a universal basic income, regardless of their social standing, regardless of their income, regardless of all that, the stigma of receiving it, well, it basically goes, right? Because if everyone gets it, it can't be a stigmatized thing. Okay, so that benefit, avoiding shame, avoiding the stigma, avoiding discrimination, that goes mostly with the idea where basic income replaces benefits. But I think there's good reasons to say we don't want to replace the benefit system entirely. We'd want to maintain the benefit system for the people who end up, for whatever reason, being the most vulnerable in society. So we want to maintain support for instance, people having children, disability, mental health support, these kind of things, in addition to a basic income. Okay, so there we've got a really quick, really basic run through of what a universal basic income might look like. There's lots of practical details that would have to be sorted out, but like I said, here we're going to focus in on the philosophical issues. So we're going to start off with that. In the next video, we're going to look at numerous arguments, philosophical arguments in favour of basic income. Then we're going to look at a couple of arguments against it. And then in the third video, we're going to dedicate that to the issue of, is universal basic income affordable? Okay. And there we're going to look in at some of the economic detail of how government spending works and how money is created. Okay guys, so that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the comments and support. I will see you back next time.